When I experience an obstacle or challenge, I'm going to move past it. I'm going to shatter that glass ceiling and I'm going to keep going.
It hurts to smash a glass ceiling.
Wow, we literally have to be superheroes to walk through this life.
While I might have been the first, I pray that I'm not the last.
Welcome, everyone. Joshua Mayer here on Taking Her Lead. And as you will notice, I'm not shifting over to one side and having Janine joining me. She's under the weather today. So also, Nick, our producer, is not here. He's on an airplane and I'm flying. So I'm flying solo, except for our guest, Donna, who I'll bring on in just a second here. And just want to introduce you to our show. If you haven't seen our show before, then of course we promote the stories, we showcase the stories of women in positions of influence. And we're very excited to bring on Donna, our guest today. And just very quickly, you can download or stream our podcast, which is the audio taken from these live streams as well as past audios on just about every platform, of course, iTunes and Pandora, SoundCloud, and many others. And we are heard around the globe and we're listened to in about 70 countries right now. So we are just thrilled about this. And lastly, for each of these live streams, you'll see them on YouTube as we are on YouTube right now. But the recorded version is usually uploaded within half a day right afterwards. So without further ado, I want to bring in Donna Romanick. And here we go. Donna, welcome.
Hey, Joshua.
How are you?
I am well. It's a beautiful day.
Isn't it, though? Here in the Northwest, it's the only place to live.
It is on days like today, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. So everyone, Donna is the Institutional Giving Manager at ACT Theater. And Donna, do you want to start off just by talking a little bit about your work there?
Sure. So I started working there about almost a year ago to the day. I was their first remote employee. So, given the pandemic, everybody had gone off site. The theater had gone dark in March, and they were in need of assistance with grants and federal funding, reaching out to corporations, foundations to keep the money coming in and to help with that. And so we're now, as I said, we're a year into it. And they hope to start live production again, January of 2022.
Yay. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in downtown Seattle. And whenever I was there, I would walk past ACT and I'd see the information outside and have a good friend who played some roles there a number of years back and talked a lot about the mission and the accomplishments of ACT. So I'm a fan, absolutely. I've always had just a ton going on, so I haven't been able to actually see it. No, I did. That's incorrect. I'm lying about that. It was probably 3 years ago. I got to see a show. Don't ask me what it was. But that's my memory. That has nothing to do with the impact. So yeah, great work that you guys are doing there. And how was your weekend?
A really nice weekend. Had friends visiting from Portland with their puppy. So that was super fun. Celebrated Mother's Day yesterday.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. And so had a family celebration here. And it was all good.
Yeah. Fabulous. And so you've got kids?
I do. So I have two sons and they're adults. They're in their 20s. And my older son lives in Seattle. He was here yesterday. And then along with his girlfriend. And then my younger son, we Zoomed him in from California.
Yeah.
He's a recent grad down there and has accepted a job down there.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were all together.
Oh, that's
so
great.
to speak.
Yeah. More so than we could in the past, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is just wonderful. So you have had a really interesting and, dare I say, triumphant journey, especially over the past couple of years. And but being a mother and now working full time, and still, of course, being a mother, and desperately wanting good things for your family and your kids, and managing all that, and really the transition too. And so we'll get to that, as I think that's one of the things that our listeners will really value from in that you were able to navigate that. A lot of women are daunted by that, the possibility and the opportunity and the challenge inherent. But I want to start back with, okay, so who are you in the sense of what are you passionate about, and what drives you? What gets you up out of bed every day?
So, big question.
I like those.
What gets me up every morning? I think what I've tried to do, and what I've also tried to sort of instill in my sons, is I try every day to be a better person the next than I was the former, and all of that entails, just trying to be more empathetic, just just sort of having some introspection, and I think I don't know how many people do this, but I tend to, when I'm in social situations, once I leave, I think about I reflect on the conversations, and just sort of think, well, what could I have done better? How could have this been enhanced in some ways? And sometimes, it can be a little critical. People are very critical of themselves, but it's just sort of, that sort of process of always sort of thinking about what could have enhanced a situation or relationship.
Yeah. And you are all about relationships. I mean, in your role, in your personal life, certainly, but in your role at ACT, being in development, right? So I imagine, depending on the day, you have quite a few of those conversations, or even if you have a few, they might be fairly focused, and there's a lot going on. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So basically, it's, what I do is you're always looking at a fit with mission and vision of our theater, of ACT Theater, and that of corporations and foundations, of institutional funders. Government is a little more straightforward. It's a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's a little more sort of technical and formal. But with corporations and foundations, it's the fit is really important, and a lot of that is about how you handle that relationship, and how you fulfill those needs for the trustees, or for the employees. If you're looking at corporate giving. And so I think that's basically, it's just trust and respect. And that's really the foundation for those relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what really drives that whole process.
Do you enjoy the process?
I do. A lot of mine is writing. And so I have to sort of convey this in writing. In terms of, I do meetings with donors. We do have those, but the director of development is often sort of leading those efforts. So for me, it's a lot of just supporting that work, and an executive director, the managing director.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. What would you say you like most about? So you do a lot of writing. What do you like most about that?
So the writing is, first of all, it's trying to create a story, I mean, everything is about storytelling. So it's creating a story that people will want to invest in and be interested in. So it's being able to capture attention right away, and keep that attention and keep them invested. And so by the end of what you have put together, people, there's buy-in, right? So ultimately what I do is you want buy-in.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy that process of how am I going to be creative, in all that I do, in terms of, sentence structure and making sure that I'm actually giving information that's necessary for them to make a decision. But just really sitting there and thinking, how am I going to make this compelling and not boring? You don't want people to have to just, be just laboring to get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I really enjoy that. I love the messaging part. Like, how do we present this need or this opportunity in the most compelling and best way? And that I really enjoy. Like, what's going to resonate?
Yeah.
What is, what's going to touch somebody enough that they will put money behind it.
Yeah.
And
it's oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity, right? I mean, I remember when I've studied this and some of the interactions that I had doing some development myself, that givers give and not givers don't give. And so it's never a matter of convincing the not givers. It's like you said, it's alignment and telling that story. And are you giving them the opportunity that they really want to give? At least, have you found that to be true? That's kind of been a bit of my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it is all about alignment, and there's really not a lot you can do in terms of shifting that if it's not something that a board has defined as a real priority, as a real interest. I mean, I don't go in it thinking I'm going to change I'm going to change their minds. I'm going to, I'm going to, go, they're going to shift from, serving military families specifically to not doing that. It's just not going to, that's not going, to work. It's a matter of me looking at what are all of the elements in our organization, what are all the programs that we do, and where is there some, crossover in that, and that's, that's really it. But I'm not going to change anybody's mind in terms of something that's structured.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how'd you become who you are now? Let's talk about going back a little bit and talk about some impactful experiences you had in childhood or adolescence that helped you develop into who you are now.
So I think, obviously your parents, and those you choose to associate with, as a young adult, through adolescence. And I think that my mom was very independent, and she felt it was important for girls, for women to be successful personally and professionally. So she felt that was the most important thing. And then my dad always just came from this perspective of do what you want to do. Don't let people intimidate you, or and don't be afraid to be different, which was really hard because, as a child, you just want to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had this sort of, this other, I don't really know how to, he just thought, you don't have to.
That's rare. That's wow.
But in a way you do, in a way you do, we're social creatures where, and so it was always like, well, I understand that. And I want to, and that was very encouraged, but there's a risk, right?
Yeah,
There's a
right.
real risk to doing that.
Yeah.
And so it was always just a matter of sort of, weighing that. It's a lot different, for someone who's middle-aged to say, don't be afraid to be different, than it is for a child, and for an adolescent. So that was pretty much, sort of the foundational developmental, just of, that I was brought up with.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that, I mean, I could see where that might be challenging when you're a kid for the exact reasons that you stated. Do you feel that those words have manifested more as you've gotten older, to the degree that now you are who you are and the world can say whatever it wants to say or think, and you're okay with that?
I think in a way, what I sort of took away from it was, just go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? All they can do is say no. And then you just, you move on, you don't have to, try not to be afraid of that. Try not to, fear putting yourself out there. And in terms of, how I sort of think about that now, is, you need to ask for what you want. Nobody else is going to do that for you. I mean, maybe your mom, if you're lucky, but other than that, no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
And so there's really, take a risk. I think not doing it and sort of just, I think it's good to be satisfied and be happy with, obviously with what you have and what you've accomplished. But if there's something more, just try it.
Yeah. I think that's a really big deal. Being able to just go for that. And that's, a lot of what we're talking about in the show is trying to empower women, and many women can, but empower the women who think, how could I, who am I to try it, to go forward? How can I navigate even if I did go forward? So it's a really big deal that you are wired that way, I think. And as you can find, we talk a little bit more about your story, that's had a big impact. Honestly, I wish I had a little bit more of that myself. When I started this podcast, I thought my voice is going to be heard at least in my community and maybe my state. And I didn't know how I felt about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little scared, to be honest. So I've gotten used to it and things have gone really well. But yeah. Had I had a little bit more of that chutzpah, it would have helped. Talked about some of the pivotal moments in your life, where you got to a point where, because of some thinking that you had developed, or your character, your maturity, or external thing that happened that made you go, oh, or, oh,
I think what's interesting and what I believe is always underestimated is just how much luck plays into everything you do.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, I've been really lucky. And I want to, I believe I acknowledge that. But when after I graduated from college, I had a communications degree, public communications degree, and a English lit degree. What I wasn't told in college was you need basic office skills. Like entry-level jobs are entry-level jobs. Like you're not going to just walk into something and, start working, with a creative director or, programming shows. And I don't, it honestly, it really wasn't sort of part of that narrative. And I got out, and it was all of a sudden people aren't asking me about my coursework. They want to know, word processing was just starting then. They want to know, am I able to do it? Do I know what, do I just have, clerical skills? And so I needed to, go to what was called secretarial school after college, just so that I would have that foundation, so I could start in the profession. And that was just this, intensive course. It was a couple months, and they also did resumes, which, building and interviewing. So there were a lot of also very good parts of that. But I had decided that I wanted to work down in Washington, D.C. I just really liked the city, and really enjoyed being there and had friends there. And that's where I took this course, and that's where I met another woman in the course, and she was a daughter of a diplomat, and she was experiencing, similar sort of shortcomings in terms of, needing to have this, these foundational skills to move on. And she was interested in international work, and she was interviewing, and she went to one organization, and that's an international organization. And she said, I love the organization. They're concerned about hiring me because of my work visa status. But I think that from what I know of you, you would really enjoy the work. And so it's a nonprofit international organization. And my background in communications was of interest to them because they ran public health communication campaigns in developing countries.
Interesting.
To combat infant mortality and help with maternal health. Yeah. And that was their biggest project at the time. They had a lot of funding, had several $1 million. At that time was a lot of money. It was $3 million from Agency for International Development, and they needed support. So they were building this project. So I went and had a reference from her, and they hired me. And so I thought I was going to be going into, like working at a news station or cable news or Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I was super interested in, and then that just put me in that world, in a really cool, really interesting job with really fascinating people. And that just started, that's how I started my career. And that's a really a big piece of what I've stayed interested in and what I continue to do. I pull from that all the time.
So we talked about that a little bit, and it was an amazing role. Do you want to talk a little bit about the details and some of the situations that you navigated, and what was fun about that? Yeah, within that position. Yeah.
So I found myself, I had imposter syndrome, when I started, because I thought I am out of my depth. I am, I don't have this global perspective. Yeah. It's just been all, US focused. I am not I don't have a master's in public health. I don't have a doctorate in public health. I don't have this scope of experience that everyone I work with has, all the consultants coming in from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I don't know this.
Yeah.
And so that took a little while, but then after you start to get a little comfortable, you're like, oh, okay, I can navigate this. I can manage this.
Yeah.
But it takes a little while. And when I worked in, my first position was supporting public health communication campaigns. And that was also, they also were awarded the first ever AIDS project. So,
Oh, interesting.
Called, it was modeled after the public health communications campaign model, and it was a AIDS communication and awareness program, and it was going to be centered in sub-Saharan Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where they were suffering the most at that time, where it was just exponential, like horrific exponential growth in HIV. And so that was just fascinating, working on that project, working with people coming in from the World Health Organization. And so, but that was very much a support role. And I was doing that for about 18 months. And then I was offered a position to work in the Fulbright program.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was working in international education and exchange programs. So we brought people in from overseas, and we did programs here, domestic programs, and we arranged meetings with counterparts. So we would have people coming in from every, like, it was usually sort of a location specific, a geographic specific program. So we'd be people in from Asia. We would be bringing in people from Africa. We would have some European ones as well. And it could be anything. It could be healthcare professionals coming in to meet with counterparts here in the States. It could be people involved it could also be people involved in media. It could be people in education. And so the posts overseas identified candidates that they thought were influential in their countries, and then they would be nominated, and then the State Department would vet that and say, yes, we want to bring them in as guests to our country. Then they would come in. They didn't know each other most of the time. Yeah. They would come here. They'd go to DC. They would start the program in DC. We would kick it off. There would be a week of appointments in DC. They would travel to about 3 or 4 other sites, meaning cities, about a week each. It was, East Coast, West Coast. Also, we had through major cities mostly. And so also we would have some Midwest programming, and then it would end in DC. We would evaluate it, and they would go from there. And so the most interesting programs were those that came in from more remote areas on the globe, and also dealing with some projects where there was a real political sensitivity, which is a lot of the Middle Eastern projects that came in. And the one most fascinating was when we brought a group in from Afghanistan, and they were, and this is back in the later 80s. And so we're looking at, U.S. support for rebels, freedom fighters, as they were referred. And we were seeking like a better political footing there. And so they brought a group of mujahideen in, and planned a a U.S. tour for them. And so when they came in, you know, we have interpreters, you have translators, you know, they're all through the State Department. And when they came in, and their first request was, we want to see Charlie Wilson. And
Interesting.
they had met him.
Yeah.
And he was over there. He was over there as, you know, Charlie Wilson's War, you know, if people remember that movie. And he was a huge force over there. He was he was a major political figure.
Yeah.
And they were all aware of him. And so they wanted to meet him. So it wasn't on the schedule, but you put it on the schedule. So, so we all went there. We went to Capitol Hill. We got to, you know, we waited in his office, and which was an amazing office. It was just pictures and weapons, and it was really something. We met it with his staff, and then they said, we're sorry, he can't meet with you because he's doing a vote. He's doing a vote on the floor. Yeah. And so we had an aide come in and speak briefly, and then we left. So sadly, never got to meet Charlie Wilson. Yeah. But everything else went according to plan. And so that was the most interesting experience that I had during my time.
So what was your role? What were you coordinating? Were you hosting? Were you communicating with? What did that look like?
So because of the nature of the project, right, it was really visible. You know, it was, you know, some projects are rated, you know, in terms of how influential they are, how visible they are, in terms of what, you know, the agenda is for the U.S., for U.S. interests. So I was I started as a project assistant, which meant I supported the project directors who got the nominees in from overseas, got the interest, got sort of the agenda of what was going on with the post overseas and the agenda of the State Department here. And we had to put together a program for them. So we wrote a proposal, and we said, okay, we think that these counterparts are going to be the most interesting for you. So I started supporting that effort, the people, the directors that did that. And then after about 2 years of that, they said, okay, would you be interested in being a project director where you would take that lead? So you take that lead, you write the proposal, you plan the program, you host the meetings. So you're running those meetings when they come into DC. And then you're coordinating with everybody across the country. So you're setting that program too. So wow. And so then, you have leads at universities or other organizations that do international education. And so you work with them to do that. So you pretty much, you decide what they do and where they go. And then when they come in country, they say, we want to, they have special requests and you do that. So, but the project I just spoke about that were those that focusing on Afghanistan, the head of the department, he was a vice president of international education and exchange. They said, we need you to lead this. This is something that we want you to do. And so he thought, okay, that's fine. But given that I was now in a position to start directing projects, he said, why don't you do this in concert with me? And that will be the first project that you direct with his supervision.
Sure. Wow.
And so that was that was really going into the fire with that one. And then after that one, we launched that, and it all worked out. The belief was, okay, you can start doing this. You can start having, control of this, working what they call, single focus projects, meaning smaller projects, not multi-country, single country, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Smaller. That's a grand scheme. Smaller.
Yeah. It was a single country, that it was Afghanistan. It was a single country, of course, with, but like I said, highly visible, a lot of, possible consequential outcomes for that, as opposed to something that wasn't as politically charged, like teaching English as a second language.
Yeah.
With, educators coming in.
Yeah. Yeah. That is absolutely fascinating. Did you and I talked about this a little bit before, and I know that there's some really cool things that happen. Did you experience any challenges throughout that time and in that role because of being a woman?
Yeah, quite a bit. So I, depending on where people were coming in from, they weren't accustomed to women in the workforce.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen. And so there was some hostility, quite frankly, with some of the groups. And you knew it was going to happen. It was not a surprise.
Right.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of conversation about what do you do? There really wasn't. We were pretty much, just had to figure it out. For a while, what was happening is they were pairing any of the women project directors with male project directors. They were not, women were not leading those.
Right.
Or you didn't have just a team of women, like project director that was a woman and project assistant that was a woman, because there was always pairs of two that would run the projects from sort of start to finish.
Yeah.
And so they would always sort of gender balance it to sort of, keep that at bay. And then after a while, it was just, well, that's not how we usually work. That's not what we usually do. And we're not going to, leadership said, we're just, we're not going to do that anymore. People need to, they're coming here, they're guests here. This, we don't need to keep reinforcing that working model. But it led to some tense moments. Some of the meetings. And
tell me about those.
Well, it was done in these ways. Some were obvious and some weren't. One was I had welcomed the group. It was our first meeting in DC. And one of the participants, it was a small group that came in, about 8 businessmen. And as I finished my presentation, which, was, this is what the agenda is, this is where you have a chance to speak now about where you're going to go and what you're going to do and who you're going to meet with. And there were a number of other people there as well that were welcoming, the interpreters and State Department program officers. And we're all sitting there, and one of the participants spoke out and said to me, he said, "You look tired, you should go home." This was in a formal meeting.
Wow.
And so you're like, oh.
How did you respond?
I just said, I said, thank you for your concern. I am not tired. I'm here to help you, and and assist you. And if you have any questions, I will be here all day. you 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 just don't take it personally. You understand the situation. You understand the circumstance. This is all new for those that are sitting, that are guests. This is all new for them.
Yeah.
And so you just have to need to keep coming in with that sort of empathy, like this is very uncomfortable situation for them. It's not comfortable for me. I had a woman program assistant who at the end of after a couple of weeks of working with this particular group, she said she didn't want to do it anymore. Because the requests were coming in fast and furious. There was no real pleasing anyone. There was a lot of criticism, and my only comment was, you just don't quit. Like you have a right to quit your job. You definitely do, and if that's a real concern, then I'm not your hiring manager. Right. But, in terms of this project, you are working with me. And so, I know it's hard. But you can't leave this project and go work on another one. That's just not you start it and you finish it.
Yeah.
So, there were other, that was the most sort of, overt and startling thing that happened in front of me.
Yeah.
So that's that was interesting.
Did that cause you any self-doubt at any point, or were you just, I'm not going to take this personally, this is what I'm going to do, this is my job, here we go? Was there a balance?
I mean, I really tried to just not get emotional about it. I never took it as a personal attack.
It's a big deal.
And I wasn't above, sort of being passive aggressive in some ways. To be totally honest, in a way, just to sort of cope, because some days, when we were hosting the group that first week in DC, and there were a lot of critical comments made, which I really don't think were about the work. I think they were about the fact that there was an all-female team in charge. Yeah. And when we would go to appointments in DC, I would insist on holding the door. And I know that this was a little problematic. I would sort of do it as a matter of course, but with this particular group, I would hold the door, and the reaction was pretty swift. Yeah. Which was that that they, that a woman doesn't do that.
Yeah.
And so I would just insist.
Yeah.
I would say, this is a common courtesy here, and I'm going to hold the door. And I just sort of made this, to me, that was like this sort of minor victory. Like
it's a powerful thing.
And so that kept me going, because the director of the International Education Exchange Program at one point said to me, "How are you doing? How are you doing with this?" Because he was there with a comment about, "You look tired, you should go home." I mean, he was there. Yeah. He sat there. He heard that. He knew my program assistant wanted to quit, and so I said, "Well, David, when we're going to meetings, I insist on holding the door." And he had a big smile, and he said, "Good for you."
Nice.
That was it.
That's fabulous. So I could talk all day about this because international affairs really interests me, but you then some things changed in your life.
Yeah, so I had my first child, and I quickly realized that I would not be able to have the time required to work, to continue doing the work I was doing.
Yeah.
Which was full time, often more than full time, all consuming.
Yeah.
And so I needed to make a decision. What I did try to do is do a job share with another a woman that had recently had her second child and decided she was going to step away. And I approached her and said, "Have you considered doing a job sharing? We could go in and try to split this work."
Yeah.
And that I would have really welcomed and loved, but nobody was doing that. You know,
Yeah.
nobody. And I knew that working part-time was not going to be a possibility. So I said I would be back, and it was only 6 weeks, right? And I had cobbled together a lot of, vacation and sick time. There was no leave policy. Sadly, not a lot has changed. And so I had to, I remember going in, to see my boss, the director, and going in with with an infant and sitting down and saying, I can't come back. I don't have family here. I'm finding childcare options, challenging and difficult. And I just, I can't do it. And he nodded and he kind of smiled. And I said, "Are you, you don't seem upset." Like, I guess, I was sort of hoping he'd be upset,
Yeah.
You can't go. But he said, "No, I really understand. And I definitely support that decision. I understand," because he had children as well. And so I had to step away, but when they did get, they did ask if I would stay on as a consultant for them, writing proposals. I couldn't run the projects, but I could do the proposals from home. And I was able to do that. And I had, often a screaming baby, and I'm talking to people on the phone, and I'm trying to get appointments and
real life. Yeah.
And and I'd say, I'm really, I try to, do it when I, I thought he might sleep, but of course, who knows? And so it was challenging, but I was able to do that for a little bit until we then were relocated to the West Coast. And at that point, I had a second child. And so we relocated through my spouse's work. And then we became even more, separated from any sort of family support.
Yeah.
And given his work, and he was traveling quite a bit, and for long periods of time, a lot of it was international stuff, I left the workforce completely.
Wow.
So, and I left for what I thought would be 5 years, and it became 16 years.
Yeah. That's a big chunk.
Yeah. So, for me, the challenge is, the challenge of going back to work. I never thought I would, not continue in a professional capacity at some point. I didn't think it was going to be 16 years. And I just thought, I'll just do it. I'll get back in. It will be fine. There's international organizations in Seattle. The Gates Foundation was just starting, and PATH is here, and it's gonna, I can just walk back in. But you can't. you know, you just can't. If there was a part-time professional experience that would have allowed me to have worked in a part-time capacity, doing something along the lines of what I do, I would have, and it been offered to me, I would have just jumped. I would have absolutely adored that. But there's really just not a lot of those opportunities. And so I began this process of going back, and it took me 18 months to get a job.
Wow.
It was something that I wanted to do.
Now, you made a big shift perceptually and then practically within that time. You found, what I'm doing is not working. You want to talk just briefly about that?
Right. So I had, like with any job search, especially if you've been out of the workplace, it's just this process of, trial and error, like I'm going to present myself, with this way, I'm going to have my resume look like this. Like it just keeps, it just keeps evolving. You just keep trying. And then, and if you're lucky enough, people will give you feedback and give you honest feedback, which nobody has to. But, if you're lucky enough, you'll get it. I found that I just started calling people. I knew someone, personal connection at the Gates Foundation. I asked her to have lunch. We had lunch, and a lot of people that she knew from the foundation eat there as well. And so they came over and they started talking. And then, one of her colleagues came over and we're talking, and he said, I said, I'm looking for work, and it's been a real challenge. And he said, well, what have you done in the past? And I explained it to him, and so I said, but it's been, it's been really difficult. And he said, he was just like, why? It's just like, I said, because I've just been out for so long, it's hard if you don't have that, if you're not sort of going through that. I think at one point he even said to me, he was like, well, why won't anybody hire you? Like, he's like, what's wrong with you? I don't like to think anything's wrong with me. But it's a gamble. It's a gamble. And so what someone said to me, I hired someone to help me with my resume and help with interviewing and help, ramp up this effort. Was he said, you are selling potential.
Interesting.
That is what you're doing, because you don't have, you have all these years out, and you've done some great volunteer work. You've been active on school boards. You've been doing some grant writing, volunteer grant writing for causes you care about. And all of that is, plays into your potential. It wasn't paid, but you did it, and you did have that experience in DC. So it's a matter of selling that. And that's what I had.
Do you think that prior to that moment, because when you made that shift to the potential piece, that led to landing the job at ACT, if I recall correctly when we were talking, but prior to that, you were more pigeonholing yourself based on specific skills that you thought you had, correct?
Yeah, I think it was, I just don't think I was really grasping, what I had to offer, that I was able to, that I had, accumulated over those 16 years. So I don't know if this is really answering the question.
That's okay. Go where you want to go.
But it's raising children. there's a lot involved in that, and it's an understatement, right? There's a lot involved in that, and so I think that for instance, my husband was, he was a huge supporter. He said, you've had to manage this. We've had to go through this. You've had to, lead a lot of, lead all those relationships, dealing with school and all of the issues that came up as a result of that. And a lot of that was, a lot of that responsibility was on me, given that he was quite busy.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, you've done all these things, like you have all this experience. It's valuable, but sadly, I understand that you may be getting the message that it's not, that no one, really is sort of, putting the weight on that would be, that perhaps they should. Yeah. So it was up to me to take that and craft it in a way and present it in a way that it wasn't, it added to my assets as opposed to was a liability. So it was that shift of, this is an asset, not a liability.
Ah, gotcha.
And I really think that's maybe what you're getting.
Yeah, I think that does answer the question. That's what I was trying to suss out. What are you, shifting gears, what do you do to care for yourself? What are some of your self-care routines?
I try to get outside, as much as I can. And here, we're so lucky to have such a beautiful place to call home. And so it's going out and hike, just especially on the weekends, if I have any time at all, it's going out, it's going hiking. Yeah. I love cross-country skiing. So those are the two. And yesterday for Mother's Day, my son said, what are you going to do during the day? Because I was with them later in the day. And I said, the one of the things I love the most, which is riding my bike. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go to one of my favorite places to go ride and do that. Yeah. And so that was, and then I went to a winery for a little while. So it was awesome. I said to my friend, I was with some friends, and I'm like, this is one of the best Mother's Days.
That's fabulous.
And
Did you do the Burt Gilman, or where'd you go?
The Burt Gilman is a good one. It's a little busy on the weekends, so I do something called the Centennial Trail, which is in Snohomish.
Oh, I know that trail. It's long. Yeah,
it's long,
solid beautiful. 30 miles. Yeah,
it's just gorgeous. Yeah,
it is gorgeous. Oh, that's really fun. What are you most hopeful about with regard to women in positions of influence, with regard to women transitioning from full-time motherhood to full-time work plus motherhood?
I am really optimistic and hopeful. I think maybe now more so than ever, just because I think flexible working conditions are now a thing. I think they've been forced. And and people, I just heard this morning, I was listening to a broadcast this morning that workers are pushing back, that some employers are saying you have to come back and into the office, and it has to be the way it was. We want you here, and we sort of don't want to, we want the old normal. We don't want the new normal. And they're pushing back and saying, no, we don't want to do that anymore. And I think that will really benefit parents, not just women, but men. Yeah. And I'm very hopeful that that's a trend that's here to stay, and it will help. I hope women who have had to leave the workforce. I know that that this situation has also led to this massive exodus of women leaving the workforce. But I'm hoping that that also then allows them another entry point, and they can continue.
It'll right the ship toward equity.
Hopefully, yes,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
hopefully.
hopeful about.
It's the hope. Yeah, Donna, this has been a treat.
Well, thank you. It's been a treat as well.
Yeah,
for
love
me.
having you on the show. We'll stay in touch for sure. I'm excited to see where you go and what you do. You have a hell of a lot to offer. And,
Oh, that's kind. Thank you.
yeah, and I'm excited to see where ACT goes. I know that you guys are really progressive and doing some very cool things. So yeah. Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we'll talk. We'll stay on afterward, and we'll talk a little bit more too. So
okay.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Well, everyone, I hope that she's great. I hope that was really valuable. And gosh, what a journey she's had. Some really cool experiences. And yeah, I really like her. And I think her approach to life with not taking things personally and understanding the potential and the value that we bring is really powerful. And I definitely found it so. You can, as mentioned before, if you just joined toward the end, we take, for every one of these live streams, we take the audio and put it on iTunes and basically every platform as a podcast. And then these live streams, the full recording is pretty quickly available on YouTube. You can go back to it and, watch parts of it or watch the whole thing. And we love it if you would share the episodes. You can just grab the YouTube link, put it on social media, send it out in emails, put it on LinkedIn. We're definitely on LinkedIn. We schedule the event for each of these on LinkedIn, and then it kicks it out to the other platforms. But if you're on LinkedIn, then follow our page. And if you've got the bandwidth, then when we post the events coming up every Monday morning, share those events and just, be real quick and say, hey, everybody check this out, and ask your connections to share them as well. That multiplication is really powerful. So from all of us here on the team, which today is me, thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And comment away. And if you have any questions or feedback, we would love that. We want this to really meet the need and meet what you guys want to see. Please email us and DM us on the variety of platforms. And we will see you soon.